Welcome to Shift, a college admissions ACT, SAT, and CLT podcast for a changing world. I'm Tyler, the founder of Achievable, and we have an affordable ACT course that includes everything you need to ace your test. A full textbook, tons of questions backed by our memory-enhancing algorithm, videos on key topics, a built-in study planner, and full-length practice exams. You can get a free trial by going to achievable.me, and if you like it, use the code podcast to get 10% off. Now, let's get started. Today, we have Leia LeMaster Horton from Horton Test Prep. And Leia, I'd love if you could just introduce yourself real quick for the viewers.
Absolutely. My name's Leia LeMaster Horton. I've been an educator for over 22 years, test prep professional for 9 years, and I'm a scholarship consultant. So I love helping families learn the process of how to earn merit-based scholarships.
Yeah, and that's also, not only is it what we're talking about today, right? But I think it's also super interesting because, as you put it, like most of the challenge for a lot of people is just figuring out where to start. But there is, quite a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow if you actually go ahead and do this properly.
Right. And I guess I should also mention I am the founder of Horton Test Prep, and I am also a test prep professional. I do ACT, SAT, and CLT test prep. But the main thing that I love to do is help families earn those merit-based scholarships.
Yeah, fantastic. So how do you start this conversation with families? Like, what's sort of the first step or square one for this?
When I do scholarship consultations with the families, it starts with the student writing a paragraph about themselves. So when the student starts with just that process of writing a paragraph about what their goals are, what they think they might want to do in life, right? Which may change later, but that is very helpful for them as they're evaluating what do I think I might want to do with life. But that paragraph will be used along with the student resume, which the student resume is the student's high school narrative. There are free templates online on canva.com that help a student learn how to make it look real professional and to tell their overall high school story. So that is their extracurriculars, their awards, right? Everything that they did in high school. So not only will they use that student resume to get a job at Publix, right? But they're going to use that student resume to go after scholarships. And the reason earning scholarships starts with writing the paragraph about themselves and writing their student resume, or because those are the two things that the student will give to their reference person when they ask them to write them a letter of recommendation. So they need to give them that student resume and the paragraph about themselves. The student resume, a lot of it's just kind of self-explanatory. Oh, you have your extracurriculars here and your, awards there. There's one area on the student resume I'd like to address. It's called the profile. It just means when the student kind of writes a couple of sentences about themselves, that's when they are breaking the third wall. That is when they are really being authentic and true to who they are. But it needs to be very specific and different than anybody else, not just a student that's dedicated to their academics and wants to make an impact on this world, right? That is a profile that describes every high school student ever. It needs to be very specific. And I worked with a family one time, and I will use this as an example. This was a student who had received her black belt in Taekwondo, and the reason she did was actually that a friend had been assaulted, and she wanted to learn how to protect herself and how to protect others. But she was able to take that life experience and write a profile. She didn't mention that event, but she did write a why she ended up deciding to get her black belt, which was wanting to, because she teaches too, she wanted to empower females to fight back and be strong. And because she was able to word it in such a way that made it personal, she was able to stand out from the crowd and it be memorable. At the end of the day, that profile, that little piece that they write about themselves needs to stand out from others and be different.
Right. Yeah, and it's so important, like just like in general with the whole college application process really is to start to find that story about yourself and kind of what, motivates you and also what makes you unique and special.
Right. And then once the student has written the paragraph about themselves, right, which is really their dot. And what the dot means is represents the what they think they might want to do with their life, right? What they
Hmm.
think their major might be and why they want to do that, what's motivating them. They need to know in life their dot may change. They may change their
Hmm.
mind and what they want to do, totally fine. But what is the dot now, right? And so that's what that paragraph is about. When they hand that paragraph, they wrote about themselves and the student resume off to the reference person to write their letter of recommendation. This is vital because now that I've been doing it for 9 years, so many students do it wrong. The student needs to guide the reference person by stating things like this. This is important. When you want a stellar letter of recommendation, you get what you ask for. The student needs to ask their reference, hey, would you be willing to write me a stellar letter of recommendation? So once the teacher, the coach, the youth pastor, whoever says yes, they know what they've committed to do. When they sit down to write that letter of recommendation, they have committed to write a stellar letter of recommendation. And it plays out. And so the other thing that the student needs to do is guide the reference person by saying, can you not mention the name of the scholarship or the name of the college, right? Because what I want is for the student to have great letters that they can keep using over and over again. And so what I found
Yeah, absolutely.
when my kids were going off to high school, this was actually in 2011, I guess. My daughter was a junior in high school and we were starting that process of getting those letters of recommendation to go after scholarships. The people that I thought were going to write the stellar letters of recommendation for her didn't. I was a little surprised. So they were very good.
Is it because you asked and they said no, or was it because they just
No,
weren't that
it was
great?
really, to be completely honest, I think what I realized is a lot of adults aren't good writers. And
Right.
a lot of adults will put off to the last minute and then whip out something that, in my opinion, is very average. But what I want to be clear on, it was a very, very, very kind, nice, uplifting letter. It was just describes any high school student ever. The letter recommendation that are going to help students win scholarships are stellar letters. And a stellar letter is when it is very, very specific about the student and why they shine. What is it that they have done that showed leadership, that showed initiative? What are the things that made an impression on that teacher or that coach? And so the student needs to ask for stellars. The student needs to guide the recommender. And here's why. What I see as a scholarship consultant so many times is that students get bogged down with those details and they receive a letter of recommendation, but it has the name of the scholarship written in the letter, so they can only use it for that one scholarship. And if they want to go after another scholarship, they have to ask that recommender again. Oh, but they don't want to ask them again because they don't want to bother them. They want to be an imposition. So the main benefit is, like, I tell families, ask for 6 letters of recommendation. 3 character references, 3 academic references. I know that sounds like a lot, sounds like overkill, but trust me, I want you to have options. And the truth be told is that, when you sit down and read all 6 letters, you're not going to have 6 stellar letters. I want you to have choices, and you'll read the letter and you'll be like, well, that's very nice, that's very kind, but still average, describing every student. This one, this is an over-the-top letter, right? The name of the scholarship's not in it. It's over-the-top letter. It has specific reasons of why that student shines, why they're the best thing since sliced bread. And that will be one of, the 6 that you choose. Hopefully 1 character reference, 1 academic reference. And that's what I see the majority of the time. That's what the President Coolidge Scholarship asks for, which we'll talk about in a minute. It's my absolute favorite scholarship ever. And that process of getting an academic reference and a character reference helps the student have 2 great ones on the books. And I do have some very strong opinions about letters of recommendation, because that is what normally stops the families from moving forward. But once you've picked out your best 2, the student should go back to the reference. And let me just pause for a quick second and say, the recommender, the reference, is always the one that sends the letter on. They're always the one that sends it on to the college or sends it on to the scholarship. But I do believe it's very powerful for the families to get access to it. So I'm not a fan of blind letters. Blind letters simply means when a teacher says, yes, I'll write that letter of recommendation for you, but you don't get to see it, right? You're not allowed to see it. I understand the reason for it. I understand that in some schools, right, a teacher gets they write great letters, and so people know that, and it ends up becoming, they get overwhelmed and they have 300 students asking for a letter. So I understand why schools make that rule. However, it really is better for the family if they're going to be going after a ton of scholarships, especially some really important ones that are full ride scholarships. You need to know what's going to be said about your child. It's so vital.
Well, and it's also like you said, if you're, I mean, I like your approach of getting 6 so that you can really have 2 good ones, right? That seems about right. And you would have no idea what they were if they were all blind, right? Not to mention that, if they're blind, it's like, I feel like it's probably harder to like have them send it to multiple places also. Like, not technically harder, but I think just like mentally, if it's blind, they're like, I did it, it's done, and it's kind of off their plate.
Yeah, and that's why once you've narrowed it down to the top 2, the student needs to go back to the recommender and say, thank you so much for writing this amazing letter. I am so thankful. And I just want to let you know that I financially need to apply to a lot of scholarships to make college happen. Is that okay if you just put that letter of recommendation on your desktop so that you can keep uploading it easily to the different scholarships that I apply for? Once the student has a yes, which they will, they're going to get a yes, because we want to help those students along. We want to help them apply for scholarships. I once wrote a letter of recommendation for one of my debaters from Legacy for Christ, and that student has asked me to keep uploading that letter again and again and again, and it is to my pleasure to do so for him. And he's earning scholarships, right? Because he's going after a bunch. You're not going to win every one you go after, but it is a numbers game. The more scholarships you go after, the more that you're going to win. And that is the hardest part, the whole getting over that stump of getting those great letters. And then after stellar letters recommendation, I would say the next thing would be for a student to consider doing a passion project. Passion project, certainly been around for 15, 20 years or more, but that's been kind of a buzz for that long amount of time. A passion project is not something for a student just to check off the list their junior year of high school and okay, I did one, right? No, it needs to be purposeful. The reason of doing a passion project is so that the student can learn a little bit more about themselves. What are they passionate about? What do they care about, right? Like what is an area of interest that they have? What do they think they might, what is their dot? What do they think they might want to do and want to study? And if they do a passion project in their potential area of interest, they're going to learn more about themselves, and they're going to learn, is this potential job a good fit for me? And so what I tell families when I'm trying to define, hey, what is a passion project, is usually it's a community service project. It doesn't have to be one, but I've seen that done many times. If a student is an athlete, let's just say that they played varsity soccer all through high school. They're going to do that. They're an athlete. They want to play in college, right? A great passion project for that student would be to host an inner city soccer camp, right? And so once they
Uh-huh.
have that idea, oh, I want to do that, it's bringing idea to fruition. That shows leadership. There's so many decisions that have to be made between idea to
Mm-hmm.
fruition. Who's going to come? Who's going to pay for it, right? Who's going to where are we going to get the t-shirts?
What is the goal? Yeah, how do we accomplish the goal?
But what I tell students is that money chases great ideas. And that is so true. If they have a great idea that they want to host this event in their community will help them do it. They're, when they are the patron of, say, State Farm or their orthodontist or their dentist, those people are going to want to help support them, right, in these projects. And so I saw it happen one time when a student wanted to potentially study finance. She considered her passion project of doing a teen camp. It was like an investment camp. And who knew that so many teenagers would care about learning how to invest in the stock market? Oh my gosh, she had almost 20 kids, right, that were aged
Mm-hmm.
16 to 18 show up to learn about investing money. And it was a huge success. It was a 3-day camp. She invited a financial planner to come in and host it. But she learned so much about her potential career that affirmed that that was going to be a good choice for her, that it
Right.
ended up really being a good use of her time. The other thing that's wonderful about passion projects is it gives students something to write about in their personal statements and college entrance essays. It gives them something to talk about in their one-on-one interviews if they're invited to a scholarship weekend. It's a huge, big event that they had the idea for, and they ended up bringing that idea to fruition. So there's just a lot of growth that takes place in
Mm-hmm.
passion projects I've seen. And past that, I do believe that one other aspect to earning scholarships past the passion projects would be potentially collegiate research.
Mm-hmm.
That is a little newer, I would say, maybe more, 4?
Like peer-reviewed research, is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's more like students in high school getting a chance to actually work on college research. And what I've found
Mm-hmm.
through the years is that, I do know that roughly 30 to 35% of students that were admitted to Ivy League schools, so more competitive schools, are requiring that research as a part of their experience in high school. And it is hard sometimes to go, well, how do I find that? I'm a high school student, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you start local, you start with the colleges in your area, you reach out to the professors that are in whatever area you want to study. Say you want to, go into engineering, look into the different aspects of what might be a good fit for you. And I will do a quick plug for like Covenant College. That's a school that has, if your engineering's your thing, you might want to consider a school that you go to one school for 3 years, but then you transfer to Georgia Tech and you graduate from
Mm-hmm.
both schools, right? But that way your connection to doing that research might be with the smaller private school, but then you're getting a chance to use that research that you did while you're a high school student, right?
Mm-hmm.
And get benefit. So once again, the reason of doing that collegiate research, not only is it definitely going to help you if you're going to a competitive school, it's going to help you stand out from the rest, right? When going after
Uh-huh.
scholarships, which is what I help families do.
Yeah, yeah, and with the collegiate research, I mean, my understanding of it is getting actually signed on to a peer-reviewed collegiate research project is accomplishment enough. It doesn't need to be like it can be any kind of local reputable school that's hosting it. So long, like just having it, I think is enough at the moment. I mean, we'll see if that changes. But yeah, this is all really good stuff, and it's all on the good news is it's kind of things you should be doing anyway as you're gearing up for the college application process, and it sets kind of like a nice foundation for all of that. And so once you kind of once you've got your plan in place for that foundation and building it right, what kind of like timeline do you set out for families to like start working on these things? And then what kind of like when do things kind of shift gears from like, okay, now we've got the pieces in place and sort of like now it's time to go start hunting for what scholarships to apply to, etc.
Absolutely. I have so many families reach out and they'll say things like, hey, when should we start the test prep journey? But what I normally tell them is a better question is, when should my child reach their highest score ever? And the answer to that is October of their junior year. And the reason I say that is not only is it going to help the student potentially do well on the PSAT, which they will take October of their junior year, but also if they've been training, right, and that's the goal to reach their highest score, then they're going to score highest on the ACT, CLT, or the SAT that October as well. The reason that's a good goal to shoot for is because there's some amazing scholarships that you apply in January of your junior year. My favorite is called the President Coolidge Scholarship. That one is so good because it is a full ride. So it is a full tuition scholarship for all 4 years and includes room and board. And that's a hard cost, right? Dorm and food.
Right. And that's not typical.
No, it's not typical. I was able to help all 3 of my children earn full tuition scholarships, but I was still paying room and board, which I will take a quick note and say that, like, my son was at a private school up in Boston. He just graduated, and we were paying $6,500 per semester just for dorm and food. So even if you get a full tuition scholarship, you're going to need more scholarships to pay for the dorm and food, right? As well as books, right? But when I go back to the President Coolidge Scholarship as the goal, January of their junior year is when you apply. That helps you realize, oh, I need scores on the books, right? Fall of junior year, both real ACT, SAT, or CLT, as well as PSAT. The PSAT, of course, is the one that's connected to the National Merit Finalist category, and that is great accolades as well. But really, just knowing that that's the goal, fall of junior year, helps families realize if you're going to go after scholarships, if you need to go after them the way the Horton family did, we needed to, right? Like, we ended up then realizing, oh, what's the process, right? So when January is the goal and you reach your scores, then the families can go, okay, now I need those, then you write your student resume, then you write that paragraph about yourself so that you can hand that off to the reference. You get those 6 letters so you can choose the best 2. So then you can ask permission for the reference person to leave it on their desktop. Then as they go through that process, they realize, this is the pieces of the puzzle that they're going to need. When students apply for the President Coolidge Scholarship, which, by the way, there are only 2 winners per year, 2 or 3 winners per year, but there are things above and beyond that. There's what's called the Coolidge Senators. There's 100 winners of that. They also win $2,000. They win a trip to DC and all kinds of other accolades and a really nice networking opportunity for the students. And I've helped several students become Coolidge Senators. But for me, I tell every high school junior to go for the President Coolidge Scholarship. Do I think they're all going to win? No. It's because I know as a scholarship consultant that the process of applying is what's valuable, the process, right? For them to realize, oh, I need scores. Oh, I need to write that paragraph. Oh, I need the student resumes, right? So all of that kind of falls into place so that once they're spring semester junior, hopefully, right, they're done with scores, right? And they can say, I'm done. But even if they're not done, right, they still want to, then they have spring semester of junior year to still continue going after those scores. Because truthfully, in my opinion, when a student is entering their senior year of high school, they have other things to be thinking about, right? Where do I want to go to school and what do I want to study? That pressure of trying to get their scores their senior year is just sometimes overwhelming. And so it's better for the student to have that deadline, right, of that January of their junior year. And again, it really helps the student learn how to go after scholarships so that they can learn the process, start applying to 2 to 4 scholarships per month, right? So either every other month, every other week, they apply to one, or they apply to 1 scholarship per week, depending on the family's goals, right? If they do that spring semester, junior year, and all through senior year, that is enough time for the student to really learn how to do it themselves so that they can learn how to plan the work and work the plan so that they can continue going after scholarships all through college as well.
Right. Well, and I think also, I mean, the nice thing about, the Coolidge Scholarship being in January is, like you said, you get all these materials prepped. You have these letters that you can reuse, and you have your resume and your essays. You'll probably have to either write 1 or 2 new essays or modify some of your old ones, but like 90% of the work has been done. And then at that point, it's just about going out and hunting for scholarships, right? Um, and at that point, like, how do you advise people start looking, or like how to look, right? Like, I mean, I feel like I could just Google scholarship or scholarship list, but that's like, you're going to come up with so much random and unrelated things. And I think you need to be somewhat aligned with what the scholarship is targeting, right? So obviously, if you want to go into STEM, you should be looking at scholarships for STEM or whatever.
Yeah, it's not just access to 1,000 scholarships, right? What families need is to learn the process of how to win them. All right, big difference between the two. And I do have a scholarship course coming out next month that walks families through the process of what I ended up doing to help my kids. But really, it's also using search engines wisely. And also, I'm a huge fan of an organization called the National Society of High School Scholars. I know that there are some people out there that are not fans of this organization, but I will tell you a little bit of what I know about it. I found out they were founded in 2002. I found out about them in 2009, and I didn't join because I read somewhere on the internet that they were a scam. So it must be true. I read it on the internet, right? So I didn't join. But then in 2011, the president of Georgia Tech spoke at their conference in Atlanta. They're both based out of Atlanta. And I ended up joining, and I'm now a partner educator with them. And so I know a lot about this organization. So just to cut to the chase, we ended up joining. My oldest daughter applied for a scholarship. She won $2,500 through NSHSS. It was a good fit. My middle daughter also won $2,000 through them. But at the end of the day, what I like about this organization is that they are so freaking encouraging. They encourage the students that, hey, if you're going to go to school for 13 years, K through 12th grade, and then you want to go off to college for another 4 or 5, you're a scholar and you need to see yourself as one. Because the truth is that, the goal is not just to go off to college, but actually to graduate from college. So in America, we have a 40% melt of students that go off to college, incur debt, and then never graduate. So I think a lot of that is that they encounter hard, right? In general, hard. But this organization that I have found is truly helpful. But the reason that the Horton family joined is because we needed access to scholarships. And so it was beneficial for my family. I did write a letter of recommendation for one of my debaters. He won $2,500. So not only my own personal family, but other people I know are winning scholarships through this organization. So that's one source. The other source is use search engines wisely. Okay, search engines will help give specific majors, right, based on their potential, the area of study. And I really like bold.org. Number one, It's free for families. Okay. Number two, they will send potential scholarships to the student that are based not only to their area of study, right, whatever they want to major in, but also to their interest. Say the student likes photography. If the student filled out their dashboard completely on bull.org, then they will also be sending them scholarships to their hobbies and interests. And I just really like that a lot. It's important for the student to have a professional email address. I normally recommend create a new email address for the going after scholarships so that the student doesn't get overwhelmed, right? And make sure it's professional. I had one student whose email address was bodybagbill232 or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, no, we're not going to have body.
Yeah. We're going with full name and maybe your birth year if your full name's taken, right? Like that's the way to do it. I agree with that.
And I even had a student her email address was something like hate no more or something. And I was like, I understand that the message was a positive and let's don't hate, but let's not have the word hate in our email address. Let's just have our name, let it be professional. So when a student creates a brand new email address that they are going to be using for those search engines, then all of the emails that come in, right, are going to be based on that. I would not suggest joining a ton of search engines. I think 2 is good. Just choose 2 and go all in. And when I say go all in, I mean just fill out their dashboard. And that's a good starting place, because then they'll start learning the process of scholarships out there. And I do recommend going after the big ones. Go after the Coca-Cola. Go after Dell, right? Like those are ones to go after, right? My 2 of my children became Disney scholars. That was $20,000 a piece. So there are big scholarships that are worth going after, but you should also go after the small ones, right? Go after the VFW posts in your neighborhood. So learn how to search for scholarships in your neighborhood by searching for keywords like grants, contests, right? Not just the word scholarship, so that you're getting a bunch to go after as well.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I mean, I think also the other thing is like, at least for me, I like the idea of getting some big name ones in there that are more general, because I think it also falls under the same category as like good practice and you never know. And then also like figuring out like what are your angles, right? Like one of them is location. So like, for Florida or for, South Carolina or wherever you live, right? Or even more local than that. Another one is like, demographic related, right? Related to your like either your religion or your race or other background. Maybe you're like a first generation college student, like that's one that has a lot of support. And I think, the last one is probably like occupation, right? So like I want to do STEM or I want to do art or whatever kind of, and just like Googling around those things, or I bet you could even ask ChatGPT, make me a list of 10 scholarships related to, art students that are from Louisiana, and they'd probably figure something out. Like I think that's kind of how I would slice it up, but obviously you would know.
My family was highly involved in speech and debate, and so we also Googled good scholarships for speech and debate, and so we ended up finding other avenues that would help them, right, take those skills.
Well, oh, sorry. I was just going to say, it also totally parlays on what all that prep work that you did beforehand, right? Because if you're applying to a speech and debate scholarship and you signed up for your speech and debate team like 2 months ago, it's not a very compelling argument as to how it's important to you, right? Versus if you've been doing it for a while, and it kind of like they feed into each other a little bit.
Yeah, and I talk about that too. I mean, the colleges are looking, a lot of families think that their student needs to be a well-rounded student, and that's really just not true. Colleges don't necessarily want a well-rounded student. They want a well-rounded incoming freshman class, right? They want a
Mhm.
diverse, well-rounded class. What they really want are pointee students. So a pointee student is a student that's shown passion and interest in an area, and they went deep and wide in that, right? They showed leadership in that. They weren't a student
Mhm.
that was 1 year of robotics, 1 year of speech and debate, 1 year of soccer, 1 year of that. That's well-rounded. No, they want a student that found something that was a good fit for them, and then they stayed with it, and then after they stayed for a while, they actually showed leadership in that area as well.
Right. Yeah, I think the whole well-rounded thing is pretty much thoroughly over at this point. Like, I think now it's all about being very pointy and having a very like clear direction that. And I mean, this is not to say that like if you're a parent or someone listening to this and you've got like a freshman in high school that they need to figure their whole life out so they could start working on stuff for your college app. But they probably have some direction, right? Whether it's like, I really want to do things like outdoors, right? Or I really want to do things in STEM or what kind of environmental policy or what have you. They can at least, or like medicine or something. Like there's so many like subgenres within that, but like even just getting kind of the big picture stuff nailed down helps a lot.
Yeah, and I guess I do just still see families that are overwhelming their students by doing way too much, where it is better for the student to have fewer things that they are truly passionate about, right? That they really care about, that are in line with what they think they might want to do with their life, and just
Mhm.
kind of go deep and wide in those.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on the scholarship process here?
Yeah, that's really it. And the truth is, just start applying. So many families kind of get stuck in that, I don't know what to do, how to start, right? Like that's why everything I
Mhm.
just mentioned was the process of starting, but then apply. Just start applying. And the truth is, when it comes to the scholarships that are, write an essay, what students need to realize is that most of the time they're going to take that paragraph that they wrote about themselves and tweak it, and that's going to end up being the answer to a prompt, because I see that prompt so often on
Mhm.
scholarships. What do you think you want to do with your life, right? How do you want to give back to society? Just, they can use that paragraph. Just tweak it a little
Right.
bit, make sure it meets the word count, right? Always follow the rules, and it's going to help them so much. And it's just make sure it's a right fit. Like, I've served on different scholarship committees for years. I was on scholarship committee for the Distinguished Young Women Scholarship. That's actually one of my absolute favorite scholarships because they give away millions of dollars. But I'm also on the scholarship committee for the Word Nerd for the NTPA, National
Mhm.
Test Prep Association. And I'm going to tell you, last year, I cannot believe how many of the essays that I had to read kind of started off with the main message of, I'm not really a word nerd, but, right? Message. And I'm like, that was a waste of my time because I was required to read the rest of the essay. And I knew they weren't going to win because they shouldn't have applied for that scholarship because they weren't a
Right.
word nerd, right? Like they didn't think that they were. Therefore, they should not have applied for that scholarship. So just make sure you're applying for the right scholarships that are the right fit. When it comes to those essays, I do want to mention that it is okay for you to take an essay that you wrote for one scholarship and tweak it and use that essay for another scholarship. I want to
Mhm.
address that that is not the same thing as self-plagiarism. When a student goes off to college, they are not allowed to take one essay that they wrote for one class for homework and use that essay in a different class. Not allowed, called self-plagiarism. They could get in a lot of trouble. The reason being is that at an institution, right, at a university or a college, you're going after a degree. So you need to have different assignments for these classes. That's not the case when going after scholarships, right? You're not going after
Mhm.
any type of certificate or a degree. So it is absolutely fine for students to tweak and reuse those scholarships. What I have seen through the years is that it usually ends up being only 4 or 5 different like essays that
Mhm.
most of the students I work with just tweak it and change it a little bit to make sure it fits, right? But for the most part, it's just 4 or 5 different essays that they're going to end up using.
Great. Yeah, and then I have one kind of like parting question for you, which is what's a good amount of scholarships to apply to? Or like what's an amount that you kind of feel like strikes a balance between like it's not like all you do all day all the time, but it's also a fair amount that will give you some good chances.
I really do believe that going after 2 to 4 scholarships per month is a good amount. More than that, it depends on a student. If they're really motivated and they certainly don't want student loans, which can be so painful when they graduate, having to pay those back, or it ends up being a drain on the family savings, right? It's beneficial to have a goal and kind of be consistent with it. So that's why I say, the families should decide themselves what's a good fit, but 2 to 4 scholarships per month is a good fit. 2 would be every other week. They're applying for 1, right? And then if they're going to go for 4 scholarships per week, it really is just knowing when are they going to work on that, right? Having that plan the work the plan means, hey, every Sunday at 5, we're going to do a student parent check-in of what scholarships are we working on this week? Okay, this one's due. Let's work on it and get it in, right? That's your time to make sure there's a powwow session of what's being done. And it is beneficial if the parent is involved, so that it actually does get accomplished, so that the student learns how to do it themselves, right? If they do it for a year and a half while they're in high school, they're going to have that down so that they can do it themselves in college. And it really is beneficial to keep going after those scholarships, because what I normally see is that students don't. They just accept their financial aid package and they check out, right? But they care about their future self that will care about those loans. They'll definitely go after scholarships.
Great. Yeah, this has all been super helpful and just really enjoy doing this episode with you. Anything else before we wrap up here?
No, I'm just so thankful that you asked me to come, and I'm just going to tell families, apply, right? Apply for the first scholarship and don't necessarily have the goal of, I want to win it. No, that'd be great if you do. I hope you do. But the goal should be, I want to learn the process of how to apply for one scholarship so that you can learn, oh, I need that student resume. Oh, and you might need a headshot. Don't let little details keep you from moving forward. That headshot does not need to be your senior photos. That headshot is a teeny tiny little picture that's going to be shown on whatever website if you win it. Let it just be a selfie. Don't let those details stop you from actually applying.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been Shift, a college admissions podcast for a changing world, hosted by Tyler from Achievable with Leia LeMaster Horton from Horton Test Prep. And you can get a free trial of Achievable's ACT course by going to achievable.me, and be sure to use the code podcast to get 10% off.